Growing up, I often found ways to blend in with others, often by hiding or simply doing what they expected. While there were bullies around, I was too small to confront them, and they frightened me. When I was little, my mom dressed me in cute dresses and let my blonde baby hair grow long. I have some pictures from those days. She used to cuddle me and call me a darling girl, but that changed abruptly when she married my stepfather. I mostly forgot those moments, though I cried a lot when it first happened, feeling suddenly labeled as one of those other people who yell and hurt others. At school, I knew any trouble meant double trouble at home with my stepfather. Even worse, when he told Mom, it would happen again. So, I learned it was smarter to placate the bullies. At night, they would drink and fight. When she was drunk, Mom often lamented having only boys. Deep down, I understood, but it didn't hurt, I just felt a dull ache. To avoid their fights, I'd escape to my room to read or daydream. Often, I'd imagine being kidnapped and taken to a better life. I always disliked being a boy. My first fantasy was being Belle from Beauty and the Beast. I tried to join girls' conversations, but they often brushed me off, focused on their own discussions. I quickly noticed that the girls in our house didn't face the same beatings as the boys. In high school, I took a job and started some advanced courses at the local college part-time. I didn't have the courage to enroll in the classes I really wanted, sewing, cooking, and women's studies, so I began a series of business classes instead. Despite doing reasonably well, I still felt uneasy. I didn't feel comfortable in my own skin, and I couldn't understand why. But I'll spare you any more build-up because I know what you want to read. I moved out of my mom's house into a tiny apartment close to my work and classes. My mom and stepfather had divorced after he caught her in an affair. By now, most other boys had cars, but owning one didn't interest me. I didn't share my address with anyone in my family. I tried my best to disconnect from that world. Leaving home early wasn't uncommon, and I learned that the police rarely bothered those who obeyed curfew and stayed out of trouble. I became adept at being invisible. One night, after missing the bus home from classes, I started walking. It was rainy and foggy, with a stretch of road lacking a sidewalk. I trudged along, one foot on gravel and the other on pavement, quickly becoming soaked and chilled. I had forgotten my coat that morning, but I didn't dwell on it since I knew the bus would be warm. As I glanced over my shoulder for traffic, headlights approached around a corner. I thought there was enough room, but the rain and splashing water from passing cars half blinded me. I shivered violently, my limbs and back aching from the cold. The next thing I knew, I was airborne, struggling to breathe, and in excruciating pain all over. I can't recall feeling the impact at all. When I landed, I passed out from the pain for a while. Eventually, I woke myself up by screaming in agony. I felt something poke me in the arm, adding to the intense pain between my legs. It felt like there was a fence post inside me, which, as it turned out, was exactly the case. I had landed on top of a metal fence post, saved only by the wire fastened to its top. Whatever they had injected into my arm knocked me out almost instantly. I don't know how long I was unconscious, but when I finally woke up, it was daylight, I was on a hard bed, and covered with a sheet. I lay there in a fog for a while, too weak and dizzy to move. I drifted in and out of consciousness, feeling oddly serene despite everything. Later, a woman entered the room and approached the bed. "Hello, I'm Hannah Fink, and I'll be your nurse until you recover." "Do you remember what happened to you?" she asked. It wasn't until years later that I learned the person who administered the shot while I was impaled on the fence post was a doctor, Dr. Rosie Graham, to be exact. At the time, she just wanted to calm me down before attracting attention with my screaming. As Nurse Fink adjusted the 4 bags hanging by my bed, she chatted with me, presumably to help me wake up. I wondered why I wasn't hungry or needing to use the restroom until I saw her replace a bag hanging on the side of the bed, a bag that looked like it contained a lot of blood. I knew it wasn't normal, but I was too groggy to feel scared. After the nurse finished, she cheerfully said goodbye and mentioned that the doctor would be in soon. I tried to piece together what kind of hospital this was, but it seemed too upscale. It took me a while to realize it must be someone's home, specifically, the doctor's palatial mansion. Just then, the doctor herself walked in. She was petite with beautiful brown hair styled in a bun. On weekends without duty, she let her hair down, and I couldn't believe how long, soft, and silky it looked. She wore a slim striped skirt suit with a tailored jacket over a pretty camisole. Her modest heels clicked on the floor as she approached the bed. "Hello, I'm Dr. Graham," she said nervously. I wanted desperately to put her at ease. It saddens me when people are anxious because of me. She explained there had been an accident and my condition was so critical that she brought me to her house just a few blocks away, rather than facing an hour-long drive to the hospital through traffic. I tried to absorb it all, but I was so dazed that it took a while to sink in. Gradually, she continued, telling me she had found me impaled on a steel post. "I don't know how you managed to avoid severing one of your arteries or the abdominal aorta," she said. She also mentioned the extensive damage caused by the post and the likelihood of losing some functions. I vaguely recalled the fence post, but nothing else. I wondered how she had managed to remove me from it but couldn't find the words to ask. It was then that I realized I couldn't move my legs, I couldn't even feel them. Startled, I managed to gasp out, "My legs." "Yes, dear, you can't feel anything down there because we gave you a special shot to manage the pain until we could determine the best course of action for repair." She still seemed very nervous, and I couldn't understand why. Summoning all my willpower, I finally moved my arms to feel around, discovering that I was tightly wrapped in cloth between my thighs. I must have turned pale because I gasped, "My genitals." But then my mind went blank. She moved to the head of the bed and did something, and within a minute or two, I was unconscious again. Later, I woke up crying and couldn't understand why. I was so upset that I made a lot of noise, initially unaware of the reason behind my distress. It gradually dawned on me that I was still deeply frightened by the accident. Will I survive? I wondered aloud. Something began beeping, and the two women rushed into the room, clearly agitated by my loud sobbing. The doctor approached, visibly fidgety. I blurted out, "Am I going to die?" A flicker of amusement crossed her face briefly before she grew serious. "Well, you've sustained serious injuries, but we believe we can repair some of the damage," she replied. Exhausted from crying, I suddenly blurted out, "Am I going to lose my stuff?" I asked. She appeared even more nervous now. "We'll do everything we can to help you," she said evasively. Then, the realization slowly formed in my foggy mind. I knew she was being vague, but I couldn't quite piece it together. Suddenly, it hit me, "If I lose my genitals, are you going to turn me into a girl?" I blurted out. Both women nervously burst into laughter. After a brief moment, they returned to their previous serious demeanor. She suddenly asked me, "Is that what you want? Would you be okay with that?" I pondered for a moment. "It seems like the best option to me, don't you think so?" Her face immediately brightened. "Well, let's consider the possibilities here," she said. We discussed at length as she explained in detail the extent of my injuries. We agreed that I should take several days to think it over. We also discussed my parents. "My dad passed away," I mentioned. "My mom lives across town, and I haven't given her my address, nor do I want her to have it," I added. She asked for my name, and I provided it. Then she left the room, stating she needed to make some phone calls. Gradually, my mind began to clear. I was thirsty and tried to find a call button, but I knew any movement might alert the nurse. I cautiously moved my arms around the bed's edge, which caused excruciating pain. I nearly cried out. Sure enough, a machine started beeping, and within minutes, the nurse appeared. "You must stay in bed, young lady," she instructed. As soon as she said that, I felt reassured about my decision. However, the doctor still wanted me to carefully consider everything. Suddenly, it dawned on me how I ended up here. It was either the doctor or the nurse who was driving when they hit me. They were together in the car. They were grappling with what to do with me. I didn't think they intended to harm me, as they seemed too nervous. But they also knew they couldn't undo the damage. My mention of possibly becoming a girl seemed to relieve them of a burden, I speculated. I'd always detested being one of those males, few were ever kind to me. I'm feeling restless, I admitted. You're far too injured to move at all, she replied sincerely. Her tone conveyed genuine concern, a first for me. No one had ever really cared for me. I'd never heard anyone say, "I love you." I'd attempted dating a few times, but girls always brushed me off. Eventually, I concluded I wasn't particularly attracted to them. Sometimes, I felt uneasy around males, especially the big, strong ones. Still feeling a bit disoriented, I confessed, I always hated not being a girl. Did you know my mom hates me? The nurse appeared taken aback at first. Her brow furrowed deeply, as though lost in thought. Well, that's all behind you now. We want to help you have a better life, she said sincerely. Her cell phone rang, and immediately she shifted into business mode. We're starting your surgery as soon as the anesthesiologist arrives, she informed me. It should only be a few minutes. The doctor had been checking my background and even found my mom, who answered the door in a drunken stupor, she continued. Figures, I remarked. Shouldn't this be done in a hospital? I asked, feeling increasingly subdued. She busied herself with items hanging by my bedside. I started feeling woozy. The doctor's head appeared over the bed, her expression filled with concern. I understand why you're making this decision, I said. Why didn't you just leave me there? I wondered aloud. Even though you are injured, I may not be the best driver, but I'm not a killer. I took an oath to do no harm, she assured me. I gazed dreamily into her eyes, she looked like an angel. It's okay. I know either you or the nurse hit me and you both got me down. I'm just grateful that you're going to give me a fresh start, I murmured. I wasn't sure if I finished the sentence or not. I think our little blossom really wants this, the nurse interjected, clearly pleased. For a while, she worried they'd have to explain why they were both tipsy and driving, and why they didn't take the injured boy to the hospital. After a moment's thought, she added, I'm really looking forward to this. It'll be rewarding and challenging for you. I wish I could take you to bed right now and make you moan and cry and beg for mercy, the nurse blurted out. Oh dear, you're getting me excited at the worst possible time. I have surgery to perform, you naughty girl, the doctor responded. With that, the doctor playfully swatted the nurse on the rear. Oh UCH, she exclaimed. How do you expect me to concentrate? The nurse complained as the doctor left the room, heading for the surgery suite. The nurse gazed tenderly at the sleeping individual. Come on, sister-to-be, we have work to do, she said softly. Pushing the bed as she exited, she kissed her finger and placed it on the person's forehead. You're going to feel a lot of pain, sweet girl, she added. I don't know how long I was unconscious, but when I woke up, I had a terrible headache and felt nauseous. It seemed like I couldn't move my legs, or at least I couldn't make them move. Through my blurry vision, I could barely discern various items around me. I couldn't move my arms or head either. Before I could panic, I drifted back to sleep. When I finally woke up for good, attempting to move my legs caused intense pain. Even breathing hurt. My arms and legs remained restrained. Now, I felt too weak to struggle any longer. I gave up and ceased trying. The annoying machine behind my head started beeping incessantly. Moments later, the nurse entered the room, wearing a bathrobe and rubbing sleep from her eyes. Now you decide to wake up, in the middle of the night, she remarked. I could tell she was trying to sound stern, but she wasn't convincing. Suddenly, my new name came to me. I hadn't been thinking about it, it just popped into my head. I know my new name, I whispered. She looked down at me, a warm smile spreading across her face. Oh, you do? Well, don't keep me in suspense. What is it? She asked eagerly. I was Gwen Brown. The boys always teased me about it. Now I want to be Gwen Brown. What do you think? I finished, feeling out of breath. I still felt disoriented, but it seemed like my deepest aspirations were emerging, dreams I didn't even know I had. That's a beautiful name, and you've had it all your life, she said warmly. Leaning over my bed, she kissed me on the cheek. Her bathrobe slipped open, revealing a pretty beaded chain bikini top. She looked stunning in it. What about the bottom part? I asked. She chuckled, completely at ease. Stepping back, she dropped her bathrobe and twirled like a model. Could you adjust my head? I can't see, I requested. She walked over, loosened the strap around my forehead, and repeated her display. She wore the matching beaded chain bottom, leaving little to my imagination. It's very pretty. Will I be able to wear something like that? I inquired. She grinned, her face bright with amusement. With a playful twinkle in her eye, she remarked, mine would probably be a bit smaller. Feeling very tired now, I started drifting off again. You, young lady, are getting very sleepy. I'll come back to play later, she teased. I think you already did, I quipped. She giggled cheerfully and skipped away. Maybe you can too someday, she called back. I dreamt of being Cinderella or something similar, feeling incredibly happy about it. I woke suddenly, thinking I heard a faint pop. The nurse and the doctor were seated on a couch in a beautiful bedroom, engrossed in conversation. It was such a serene scene that I nestled deeper into the covers, feeling safe and content. They continued chatting, unaware of my wakefulness. Well, we need to decide on the chest size. She lost so much blood in the accident, I'm amazed she made it home, one of them remarked. Yes, it's incredible. I thought I was headed to jail for manslaughter, and now that's all behind us, and we have this wonderful little project. Have you ever done something like this before? She asked. About 10 years ago, I created a vagina for someone, but then she tragically took her own life, she explained regretfully. It was such a shame. Could I please have something to drink? My mouth tastes terrible, I interrupted. Both of them laughed in surprise. Ah, our sleeping beauty awakens, the nurse exclaimed. They both approached my bed and stood beside me. The doctor gently placed a delicate hand on my forehead. No fever, she reported. The nurse handed me a small cup of water. Can't have too much. We need to check if all your equipment works, she chuckled. I sipped the water and asked, could I sit up, please? My goodness, you're full of demands. Next thing, you'll be asking for food, she joked, trying to suppress a giggle. Suddenly, I felt ravenous. Oh, please, I said eagerly. Look what you've started. Looks like our girl is on the mend, the nurse remarked. Later, I lay there munching on Jell-O and answering the doctor's questions. So, she began, you want a C-sized chest, wider hips, and a higher voice. Anything else? She inquired. Suddenly curious, I blurted out, so, who's the boy and who's the girl? The doctor didn't seem surprised or embarrassed. I'm the girl or submissive, and she's the dominant or the boy, however you prefer to say it. It takes a load off me not having to be in charge all the time, she explained. Does your master beat you? I asked, half jokingly. She burst into laughter. I think we've covered that topic enough for now. So, how long do you want your hair to grow? She asked, changing the subject. I hadn't considered it yet. Well, if you're going through all this trouble, I'd like it down my back. Could I? I asked eagerly. I feel like a kid in a candy store, I added with a grin that started to ache after a while. Of course, Princess Gwen, she replied warmly. By the way, I still don't know who either of you are. Are you angels? I mused, still a bit groggy. That never came up, did it? Well, I'm Hannah Fink. I'm an RN. You can call the doctor Rosie, she introduced herself. Over the next couple of hours, my bodily functions started to return. It burned when I peed initially due to a plastic device inside me, and later they had me practice removing and reinserting the bag several times a day. It was quite painful at first. I also had a broken femur from the car accident, which they jokingly scolded me about breaking their windshield. As it became clear that I would recover, the doctor guided me through a lengthy transformation into who I am today. Hair removal was the most tedious part. Just as I started feeling better, those stubborn little stubs would begin to grow back. It took 6 or 7 complete removals before the regrowth finally stopped altogether. It took a little over a year for my hair to fully grow out, and I've grown attached to its length. I never want to cut it. Dr. Rosie often compliments how it looks when I comb it straight, though sometimes I wear it in a ponytail. I had given up my apartment, and they provided me with a spacious suite on the 3rd floor, overlooking the grounds and the lake. Just when I thought they were finished with my treatments, Dr. Rosie approached me one day, deep in thought as she discussed further options. "Gwen, we've been discussing and think we could enhance your appearance with some additional surgery," she began, causing my heart to skip a beat at the thought of more procedures. "What are you planning to do?" I asked nervously. My voice had become higher-pitched after months of speech therapy with a woman they brought in to help me sound like a teenage girl. "Well, we need to study your anatomy further, but we believe we can help improve your movement and gait to be more feminine. We can't widen your hips by altering your pelvis, but we think we can achieve a similar effect by adjusting your stance through extensions to your hip joints, though this will be painful," she explained. "I also have a friend who's been a plastic surgeon for years, and he believes he can refine your facial features to appear more feminine," she added. I felt increasingly apprehensive and blurted out, "I don't want to know the details, just do what you think is best." "The thought of it scares me too much," I admitted, tears welling up in my eyes and my voice trembling as if I had a cold. For several days, the 3 of them met at her house over coffee. As I limped through the grand room, I caught snippets of their discussions about consent and survival. Overwhelmed, I hurried out of the room, needing some distance from the weight of their decisions. The doctor's mansion was immense, resembling one of those sprawling English estates to me. It boasted a pool, a vast circular driveway, and so many bedrooms that I never managed to explore them all. They had a cook and a maid on hand most of the time, along with a gardening crew that meticulously maintained the grounds. I often pondered how a surgeon could amass such wealth, only later discovering that her father had left her so financially secure that she didn't need to work. She simply loved practicing medicine, finding it exhilarating. The hip surgery turned out to be the most challenging ordeal of all, compounded by complications that made me fear I might never walk without crutches again. The doctor hadn't fully disclosed the procedure's details to me. She had actually replaced the top portion of my femur with a more offset joint. Though my medical knowledge was limited, it felt as though she had adjusted the muscles that typically keep a woman's legs together, making it more natural for me to sit with my knees modestly closed. Immediately post-operation, they installed a contraption in my bed with pedals resembling a bicycle. They insisted I pedal it several times a day under threat of severe consequences. When I asked why, the doctor merely smiled, and the pain was so intense at times that I feared I might not survive. My arms remained restrained, only freed when one of them was present. I could feel bandages around my head, but they chuckled when I inquired about them, frustrating me as they treated me with a patronizing air, like a child. The doctor kept me heavily sedated for what seemed like an eternity, though it was only 2 weeks. They encouraged me to get up and walk around as much as I could, but cautioned me to proceed slowly and not to rush anything. One gloomy day as I lay in bed, both the nurse and the doctor approached my bedside, their demeanor unusually reserved. Yet, I caught the nurse stifling a giggle, leaving me puzzled and unsure of what amused her. Legally, I was declared dead, so Hannah could have easily disposed of me in the dumpster if she wanted to. I'm immensely grateful she didn't. My initial attempts at walking were excruciating and disorienting. My legs felt awkward and refused to support me properly. Hannah studied me as I struggled along a set of parallel bars, offering encouragement, while Rosie observed my progress silently. Before long, I grew faint and collapsed like a leaf. When I woke up back in bed, Rosie was waiting for me to regain consciousness. "Hey lazy, I was wondering when you'd stop pretending and open those eyes," she said with a hint of amusement. Feeling sorry for myself, I burst into tears, declaring, "Just wait until someone cuts away at you and leaves you bedridden." My words were earnest, every bit of frustration pouring out. Hannah teased me lightly, observing, "It's like listening to an upset teenager throwing a fit." Angered by her light-hearted response, I shot her a murderous glare, only to find her smiling indulgently. That infuriated me further. "Hannah," I sobbed, "you're mocking me. I'm in so much pain, I can't walk, and I'm terrified." My voice cracked into a croak towards the end, tears flowing uncontrollably. She held me close as I sobbed, eventually calming down to a bout of hiccups. Expecting her to leave me to cry alone, I was surprised when Hannah stayed by my side, revealing a genuine concern that touched me deeply. After I had cried myself out, we started talking. I expressed my astonishment that my outburst hadn't upset her, thanking her for staying with me. Hannah kissed my forehead tenderly, then planted a deeper kiss on my lips, leaving us both breathless. I noticed her flushed face and wide smile as we parted. Reaching over to the bedside table, Hannah pressed a button I hadn't noticed before. "I think she's ready, Rosie," she said. A soft acknowledgement came from a speaker somewhere in the room, and moments later, the doctor burst through the door, beaming from ear to ear. Seeing her wide smile lifted my spirits, and soon we were all laughing and discussing my future. It turned out they had performed surgeries on my hips, knees, and even my face with the help of one of their friends. I hadn't realized my knees were operated on, which explained the slight discomfort, and my face was tightly wrapped in bandages. Learning to walk again, I developed a pronounced, girly sway. "You'll be swaying so much, we'll have to widen the doors, just for you," Rosie remarked, with amusement. Curious about their methods, I caught a smirk on Hannah's face, and when I turned to Rosie, she burst into laughter. "No way," I sheepishly admitted, feeling a blush spread across my face as I realized I'd been fooled. After pouting for a moment, I sat up and hugged Rosie and then Hannah. They teased me with playful, overly affectionate kisses until I begged for mercy. That night, the three of us were filled with joy, especially me. When the bandages finally came off my face, I looked like I'd been in a brawl. I nearly started crying again, but Rosie reassured me that the swelling and bruising would fade in time. I hesitated to ask how long in a while meant. I wasn't sure I really wanted to know. Within a few days, I managed to move around clumsily with the help of 2 crutches, the kind with 4 arm bands. Hannah even jokingly threatened to spank me when she thought I wasn't working hard enough. Once, she playfully smacked me on the butt, but the patting of my bathrobe softened the blow. "The next one will be with your robe over your head and your panties around your ankles," she said, sounding serious. Shocked, I looked at her, realizing she wasn't joking this time. She meant business, I thought, and from then on, I redoubled my efforts to meet her expectations. My face had cleared significantly, and I was getting to know the new Gwen. I was beginning to feel somewhat attractive. My lips remained quite puffy, making it challenging to pronounce some words correctly. Rosie explained that they had injected my lips to enhance their femininity. They had also worked on my nose, teeth, and jaw, although I couldn't discern exactly what changes were made. Rosie assured me that once I healed, I would appear much more feminine. Everything felt new and wonderful to me, and I was incredibly happy. They had restricted my access to certain parts of the house and removed all the mirrors from my living area. One night, a few weeks later, Hannah entered my room and found me soaking in the jacuzzi. Surprisingly, I wasn't as sore as I had been a few days earlier. "All right, Missy, out of the tub, and we'll style your hair and get you dressed," she said. She had laid out a variety of clothes, but I couldn't see them clearly from the bathroom. Hannah blow-dried my hair and then used hairspray and a long, thin curling iron. A few times, she accidentally burned my scalp with the hot rod, apologizing and urging me to stay still and not talk. When she finished, my hair looked beautiful. I loved it that way and asked her if I could keep it like that all the time. Sure, but you'll have to do it yourself, silly, Hannah teased. I couldn't quite tell if she was serious or not. I can't do this alone. Will you teach me? I really want to look pretty, I asked. Moving over to the bed, I could vaguely make out a dress in the pile of clothes. Hannah stepped back and studied me for a moment, pursing her lips as she assessed my appearance. She returned from the closet with a corset, which I recognized from seeing my older sister wear one to dances and dates. Why do I need that? Don't I already look like a woman? I asked, my voice betraying my concern. Rosie stepped in to explain, well, dear, some women and most transgender individuals wear these to achieve the ideal shape for a woman's body and to feel more like themselves. With all the work we've done for you, it might just be a tool to help you maintain your new appearance. She helped me get dressed. I put on full cotton panties and a soft, comfortable bra, followed by a stretch cotton top that covered from just below my panties to just over my new chest. Dr. Rosie had mentioned that she anticipated I would end up as a C-cup once the swelling subsided and hormone treatments began. I was fascinated by my chest and felt a pang of regret having to cover it up. Like any girl, I wanted to get to know them. Hannah didn't lace the corset as tightly as I had feared, just enough to cinch my waist a bit. I noticed it slightly restricted my breathing, but Hannah assured me that my body would adjust, and soon I wouldn't want to take it off. Fat chance, I thought to myself. Little did I know, this was a special occasion. I began to suspect something when Hannah handed me a pair of stockings, and I quickly learned how to put them on after just 2 tries. The corset had garters attached, and once Hannah showed me how to fasten them, it became quite simple. I hadn't bothered to check the mirrors, not realizing they had been returned. After finishing with the undergarments, Hannah handed me a gown and helped me slip into it. It was a metallic blue color with a wide collar and scoop neck. She also gave me a narrow black slip without a back vent. Then came the dress itself. As I walked, I could feel the fabric snugly hugging my figure all the way down to the hem below my knees with each step. It felt amazing, and I absolutely adored it. She assisted me into matching heels that looked quite high but were surprisingly comfortable, with a heel height of only about 2 inches. I had been wearing dresses for weeks now and had graduated to using just a single cane, as one knee was healing slower than the other. A woman who specialized in modeling had given me extensive lessons on posture. It finally dawned on me what had been done to my knees. The doctor had adjusted them, making them flexible, and combined with my new wide hips, it was nearly impossible to slouch around like I used to. The training was rigorous, but I eventually began to develop a sense of how to walk, sit, and move gracefully. One day, the doctor informed me that I was experiencing an education equivalent to what other girls my age had received over 16 years. Walking out to Hannah's car with Rosie, I felt like a princess. I now fully understood the importance of sitting first and then swinging my legs into the car. The evening at dinner was delightful. Later that night after dinner, a couple of her male colleagues mysteriously joined us for dinner and dancing. While I knew Hannah and Rosie were in a relationship, I was surprised to see that they harbored no animosity toward males, unlike some lesbians I had encountered. Freddie, a gastroenterologist, asked me to dance, and immediately my face and neck flushed with heat. Rosie chuckled and announced to everyone, "Look, Gwen is blushing." I felt so embarrassed that I wanted to hide under the table. While fidgeting, I accidentally kicked off one of my shoes and began frantically searching for it. I turned in my chair, lifted the tablecloth to locate it, and that's when Freddie saw my predicament. He smoothly moved my chair aside, retrieved my shoe, and returned it to me. As I reached out to thank him, he pulled the shoe away playfully and declared, "A gallant man always puts the shoe on the lady." I was mortified. I overheard a lady at another table remark, "That's what a gentleman does." The whole ordeal overwhelmed me, and I felt lightheaded when I stood up. Freddie instinctively grasped my shoulders to steady me, which felt both strange and surprisingly comforting. Uncertain how to react, I found myself unexpectedly enjoying being held by a man. The dizziness passed quickly, and Freddie led me onto the dance floor. He made a spectacle of our dance, but I began to feel wonderfully indulged. Although I vaguely remembered dance class from grade school, it had been so long ago that I was unsure of myself. I hardly remember how to dance, I admitted, feeling awkward. No worries, my lady. I shall teach you as we go, Freddie assured me. His attention thrilled me, and the next several dances transported me to a state of pure happiness. It was the first time in my life that I felt truly at ease. You are remarkably beautiful, he complimented me. Though I didn't fully believe it at the time, I graciously replied, thank you so much. After we danced ourselves weary, Freddie escorted me back to our table and lightly kissed me on the cheek. His touch left me feeling elated. He held both of my hands gently in his, and on my tiptoes, I returned the kiss, aiming for his cheek, but settling on his neck. He chuckled, I'm happily married, so you mustn't distract me too much. In that moment, I felt the power of a woman in a wonderfully unexpected way. When he released my hands, I couldn't contain my excitement and danced around the table to Hannah and Rosie, thanking them profusely while showering them with kisses and hugs. Rosie found my exuberance amusing. Careful, young lady, she teased, you'll attract attention from everyone here. I was overjoyed to see that people recognized me as a woman. All the pain I had endured seemed worth it. Turning to Hannah and Rosie, I exclaimed, I don't care what others think. I'm just so incredibly happy and grateful for the life you've rescued me from and the new one you've given me.